What's the most you've seen someone be so out of touch with reality? My father, by far, but the coin incident was the farthest from reality he's ever been. My dad collects coins because his extremely Hungarian immigrant grandfather convinced him that the bank, capitalizing it because to him, all banks are just one huge world bank, is determined to steal all his money from him, so he has to have a backup plan. This in and of itself isn't too extreme. Plenty of people choose self-sustenance due to a distrust in government and economics, but the real kicker happened when he tried to roll his coins. He has to order his coin rolls online because he doesn't want to go to the bank and get coin rolls because then the bank will know how much money he's hiding from them. I'm not kidding. Anyway, he ordered a bag of coin rolls and waited about a month for them to come before he started getting curious where they were. He asked my mom to check the order tracking while he was at work one day, which led to this conversation. Mom, Dad's name. It says here that the package made it to town we live in 2 weeks ago, but got sent back. It says you gave no delivery address. Dad, yeah, why would I do that? I don't want them to know where I live. They might tell everyone. Your father sounds like Ron Swanson. My coworker's 17-year-old daughter had her first job interview recently. It was at a movie theater. When she got home, her mom asked how it went. Daughter, I told them that I was only interested in a job that would let me work from home. That way, I can get snacks whenever I want. I would have loved to have been a witness to the interviewer's expression at that moment. What about that kid in Texas who murdered 4 people with his car then pleaded that he was too rich to value other humans' lives? He has a serious medical condition. It's called having a cold black pustule of a heart. Went on a trip with an ex to Asia. She didn't like it because she couldn't understand why people didn't speak English. So she would just yell at them, "I need a napkin." Bathroom, where I pretty much told her to have some respect for people. Talk to them politely. She got all mad and fussy at me the whole trip. This is actually advice I give people. Go on an extended vacation with someone before you marry them. Foreign countries are especially effective. There are few situations which will be more revealing of personal character and the strength of your interpersonal dynamics. I've met a few people who are really brilliant in one field, yet lack even the most basic level of sense in certain areas outside of it. Sort of like the thing about Einstein not being able to tie his shoes, if that's true. My favorite was a university professor, absolutely brilliant knowledge of Middle Eastern politics, particularly around the Israel-Palestine conflict. He could remember insanely precise historical details going back thousands of years, and seemed to understand the subtlest of nuances on both sides of the conflict. His lectures were amazing, or they would have been, if he had turned off his cell phone. He simply couldn't figure out how to silence his phone, or even turn it on and off. He had let his tay do it for him a couple of times, but then he'd leave with it still off and couldn't figure out how to turn it back on until he came back the next day. So after going through that twice he decided he would just leave it on. And it appeared that every telemarketer on earth had his number, because it would ring at least 5 times an hour at full volume, and he'd just talk over the top of it like it wasn't happening. He also never answered his email, because he apparently didn't realize that he had one or might need to use it. One day he'd forgotten to bring his little water jug, and sent his tay to the vending machine in the middle of a lecture to bring him a bottle of water. She brought it back and handed it to him, and he turned red in the face trying to get it open, before handing it back to her and declaring that something was wrong with it. She opened it quickly and easily. He'd been turning the cap the wrong way. I should specify here that this was not a super old guy who you'd expect to have issues with technology and life in general. He was in his mid or late 40s. Too much college, not enough high school. Okay, so I was 15 and working at McDonald's. I was at the back window where you take people's money. A customer came and blew past the back speaker where you order. That was pretty typical, so I figured it was just a normal mistake. When they get to my window it is the very old lady. She smiles at me, holds a grocery bag up with frozen chicken and a 2-liter of soda. She holds out a $20 bill and asks how much for the chicken and soda. 15-year-old me didn't have the coping skills for this. I stared at her for what felt like forever. Finally I said I think you're confused. She drove off, with her car halfway over the curb. I spent several minutes staring blankly at the screen after this one. I still can't fathom what kind of transaction she was trying to participate in. As a public defender, I was defending a Chinese woman charged with prostitution at a massage parlor. I suspected she might be a victim of sex trafficking and spoke to the judge in her chambers about it. Some counties have programs designed to help victims instead of punish them. Not only did the judge not believe my client was a sex slave, she didn't think sex trafficking even existed and told me that everyone needs to be responsible for their own actions. I eventually convinced her to drop the charges but was astounded by how out of touch the judge was. It's one thing not to believe that my client was a victim, but it's incomprehensible that a judge would not be aware that sex trafficking is a thing. This one is pretty short, but my sister was the usual rich white party college girl, always complaining that she was broke and didn't have time to get a job because she was so busy all day with school, only took 4 classes FFS, and generally being a dumb spoiled girl. Come her 4th year when she's supposed to graduate and she suddenly springs it on my dad that she can't graduate because of a terrible GPA, and at the same time my dad had lost his job, so he just cut her off completely financially. She freaking fell apart, couldn't deal with it, moved to Florida with her mom, took out loans until she was 10k in debt, took a year and a half extra to finally graduate, and got addicted to pills. Then she did so much Adderall she had a seizure, moved back in with my dad, and then had an early life crisis and up and moved in with a friend in Colorado talking about how she had free rent and would figure the rest out when she got there and yada yada. She has a bachelor's in business, supposedly doesn't want an office job of any sort. Her friend moved away suddenly to Washington to chase some boy she had a crush on. Now my sister is begging me weekly to let her live with me in my apartment for free because she doesn't want to live with my parents, and she asked me to get her a job at my work, and she bought a freaking dog for no reason and can't afford to raise it. I am ranting, but my sister is not a forward thinker. Actually, she's just not a thinker in general. I love the just get me a job at your work requests. Typically the person has zero background in any job that might be available, and then they seem to think I can just direct the general manager to hire my sort of friend without some sort of interview or vetting. Even if I had that power, there are many policies in place to stop nepotism from happening. My first job was running the cash register drive-thru at a crappy Hardee's restaurant. Now, while nearly everyone that worked there was either in high school and or in some stage of the recidivism process, this one middle-aged fella was a real gem. He claimed to have an IQ of 180, but refused to join Mensa because it was beneath him. Made thousands of dollars selling cigarettes to underage kids while he was in high school, and of course he went on to serve in the military as a special forces commando. He never did explain how he ended up 300 pounds washing dishes in a greasy kitchen while detailing his life story to a scrawny 16-year-old. My house isn't that big, I only have 6 bedrooms. One of my classmates, a friend of mine, said he was disappointed that he couldn't find an affordable house that had just a couple acres and a pool. Well, yeah, your parents' house isn't an affordable house, it's a mansion. A guy I know once told me that dinosaurs were a hoax, and dinosaur bones were floating in space when God formed the earth. That's why they're trapped in the ground. I'm a jeweler metalsmith and often work festivals and street fairs to sell my work. My husband and I were hanging out in my tent last summer at a festival and a woman walks in, looking harmless enough. This may also be a sign of me being a little out of touch with reality, as I took in her flowing tented skirt and multiple colored scarves and wavy brown gray hair tied back with a leather rope and assumed she was a sweet old hippie lady. This assumption made her next few words all the more shocking. She started off simple enough, talking about her own art and admiring a few pieces, trying a few things on. And then she noticed I was pregnant, 6 months at that point, and asked if I knew that a blood moon was coming soon and that I should stay inside my house for fear of the power of this blood moon sending me into preterm labor and possibly resulting in a stillbirth. She then reminded us that this next blood moon was a sign of the apocalypse, and that Jesus would be returning to the earth soon to take all the righteous to heaven. She said that if this happened before my baby was born, that I would wake up miraculously not pregnant anymore, as he would claim all innocents in his name and spirit them away to glory. She then said, and you know, of course this is all our fault, humans, not God's. She didn't notice through her diatribe that our smiles had become completely frozen and we were hunching down more and more in our seats. I said, "Okay, well thank you." She left. I look sideways at all sweet old hippie ladies now. Whoa, what a weird combination of pagan mysticism and Christianity. About 3 years ago and I had a young woman, probably early 20s, come into the cafe I work at. She ordered herself a drink and a pastry of some sort. Her total around $6. She proceeded to hand me a $1 bill and 6 quarters. I took the money and waited for her to procure more, but she just stood there staring at me. I told her, "I'm sorry, it's $6.87. Or whatever." She says, "I know I gave you 7. I said, "No, this is only $2.25. She took the money from my hand and counted each item in front of me like I was stupid, counting each item as $1. I pointed to the quarters and told her, "Those are quarters, not dollars." Keep in mind this person was obviously not foreign or anything. She had no accent and seemed completely American. Anyway, her response was, "I know they're quarters, but they're dollars." She then proceeded to pick up one of the quarters and point to the word dollar inscribed on the bottom beneath Georgia's head. At this point I was thinking, this is the single dumbest person I've ever seen, or this is the worst con ever conceived. But she didn't give up. She demanded to speak to a manager. I got the manager and he told her the same thing. She started getting visibly upset and holding back tears. She might have been embarrassed. Best I can figure is that she somehow never learned about money and change somehow and used it so rarely that she assumed quarters were dollars because technically the word dollar was on the coin. My boss daughter has 4 or 5 DUIs, so they took her license away and installed the Uber app on her phone. She tells people she has a personal driver. Install the Uber app on her phone. I like the insinuation that she is either too stupid or lazy to install the Uber app herself, so they had to do it for her. I used to work in a pizza place and my boss, the owner, was one of the strangest guys I've ever met. He used to tell me that the world was run by reptilian aliens and that the moon was their base. He knew this because NASA once hit something off the moon and it sounded like a bell and thus must be hollow and full of lizard people. Left that job after 3 weeks. Got a good one. I went to school in a UBC for a year and lived in the dorms. One of the super rich Chinese kids that populated my school lived on the same floor as me. Her first day there she took a shower in the public bathroom and then just left all her clothes strewn about. She assumed the maid would come pick them up and wash them. Free clothes for everyone else, I guess. I work in advertising. Lots of creatives and producers in this industry who are super out of touch with reality. Mostly it manifests itself in people taking credit for huge societal fads just because they used it once in an ad. So for example, let's say we used the word epic in an ad at some point, that creative will believe that they are responsible for how often the word epic has been used since then. Occasionally it will manifest itself in crazier ways. I once had to try to explain to a creative why a radio spot couldn't detect a listener's name and then automatically insert that name into the VO. My sister was just telling me this story. She went to a private high school in a very nice area with very rich kids. One day my sister sees one of her friends crying and quickly runs over to her to ask what is wrong. Her friend, through sobs, manages to say everything is just so unfair. I can't even believe my life. My sister is so concerned because this girl seems on the verge of a breakdown. After calming her down for a bit, my sister asks again what is bothering the friend, thinking maybe someone died or her parents are getting divorced. Well, you know my birthday is coming up and so is my sister's. And well, sobbing some more, my parents are getting us both brand new Range Rovers. And because she is older breaks down, she is getting the black one, but I wanted that owner. Yeah, the only thing my sister could do was say I am so sorry for you and walk away. We still do feel bad for her. So detached. Do kids count? Cause when I was a kid I was on the swim team at an athletic club in a primarily rich area, with us being middle lower class. The athletic club had a grill and I saw people all day going up and getting food just by showing their access card. I asked them what they did and they said just scan your access card and you get food. Of course, in my mind that meant it was complimentary. So I started getting all sorts of food and snacks, frozen yogurt, Slurpees, chicken fingers, cheese fries, smoothies, etc. Come the end of the month, my parents get our membership bill and start freaking out. I didn't hear the beginning of the conversation and walk in just in time for them to wonder where all these food charges came from. I, in my naivety, said I got all that food but it's free, right? They told me it all had to be paid for. When I asked the other kids, they all said no way, it's free. I never have to pay. Turns out their parents were just so loaded they didn't care what the bill was, it just got paid and they ate whatever they wanted, however much. It was around that time I realized just how out of class I was compared to them. The trick was to just let them buy food for you. My company is switching its non-exempt employees from a B monthly pay schedule to a B weekly pay schedule. Because of the reduction in per paycheck pay, salary is divisible by 26 weeks now, versus 24 previously. Payroll is offering a one-time advance payment of the third paycheck in the upcoming 3 paycheck months so that employees who live on a tight budget can divvy that up for bills or payments or whatever to transition to the impact of their new paycheck being slightly reduced. You have to notify payroll if you want to take this option. One manager couldn't wrap their head around the existence of people living paycheck to paycheck. They asked, couldn't they make more money? Couldn't they learn to save? Problem solved. Duh. Funny thing is their nanny, whom they rely on for everything, is quitting because they aren't paying her enough, and the cost of living here is too high. My brother's best friend married a pretty rich girl. He said the first time he saw her do laundry she was going through her pockets and throwing her loose change in the garbage. She had no idea that people kept their change. Genuinely thought everyone just threw it away. I clean houses, and the teenage girl in one of them throws away any bill that has a rip in it. I had a friend who was going to Greece with her family and asked me to come. I told her sorry, I'd like to but that's too expensive. She responded with just ask your parents to pay, I'm sure they will. I could not for the life of me convince her that no, my parents would not pay to send me to Greece. She literally could not wrap her mind around the fact that some people's parents would not pay for them to go on vacation. So I used to work at a machine shop owned and ran by a family. All their kids worked there, and were probably the most selfish, self-absorbed, jaded people I've ever met. So the owners had a very nice house, which they let one of their children and family live in with them. Their old house was given to another child and her family. A third house was purchased and given to their last child and family. All of these properties were being paid for by the parents, as well as all of their $40,000 salaries and benefits. All of the 3 children worked there, and their spouses. Also, they each had new company cars every 2 years. Who needs a company car when they work in an office? Also, when they carpool together and leave some of the new cars at home every day, the parents are very nice people and very giving. The children and their families, however, are freaking buttholes. Every day after school all of the grandkids would come in the shop and run around freaking off and getting into crap. This is a machine shop. Heavy machinery constantly running. Don't let your kids shoot freaking Nerf guns at each other while I'm running a hydraulic press. So one day at lunch, I hear 2 of the spouses and one of the owner's kids yelling at the owner, like, screaming. Why, you ask? Because he didn't want to purchase season tickets 3 rows closer than what they had already for our local NFL team. Jaded but spoiled dongheads. Meanwhile, as non-family members are struggling to pay bills and being turned down raises. Don't let your kids shoot freaking Nerf guns at each other while I'm running a hydraulic press. These kids are very dangerous and could attack at any time. We must deal with them. I live in London as a welfare rep for American students. Knowing that American college costs a bundle, and the program to come over costs a load too. These students tend to be the richest and whitest of suburbia. One day the Wi-Fi went down and I may as well have told them that there was no drinking water in the UK. About 40 students were knocking on my door telling me it wasn't acceptable and that they were calling their daddies to sort it. My daddy is a lawyer. So if you think you're getting money for this accommodation when I haven't had Wi-Fi, you've got another thing coming. That sort of thing. I tried to calm them down. Let them know it would be back on in an hour or 2 when one of them said the following line. You can't blame us for being upset. We grew up in the first world. I was flabbergasted. Not only did she talk about being from the first world, who does that? Like that is something to be proud of, but her entire argument was everything in my life has always been easy and perfect. How dare you take away the most minor of utilities for 3 hours? I despair. I love the implication that London isn't considered first world by them. You don't have to go to college and I'm not helping you with FAFSA because Armageddon is coming soon and we'll all be in a heavenly paradise. You should spend your time going door to door in the field ministry until Armageddon comes instead. My mom. Holy crap. If you ever need to kick back and get into some heretical and ungodly things, let me know. I'm pretty much a professional sinner. About 30% of my Facebook feed. Some just post political or health or medical conspiracies balls all day and never actually research anything. Yes, but they also tell you that if you do the research like they have, aka find some crazy person's blog and treat it like gospel, then you'll know the truth too. Had a coworker ask me what denomination I am. I replied I don't believe in God. She was so dumbfounded that she didn't have a reply. 3 days later she came back and asked if I was worried about going to heck, or what Jesus would think. Had to explain I didn't believe in those either. She had no idea atheism existed. She was told in church that atheists were just people who were mad at God, but she thought that still meant they were religious. She was 43 years old. This is both hilarious and scary. I have a coworker who once got visibly upset because I said he was about the same age as my parents. He's 51. My parents are 53. I'd like to point out that I didn't just say this out of the blue. He asked how old my parents were, and I knew his age, so I made the comparison. He also said things like I work out, you know. I'm stronger than guys half my age. Very much a Manchild in denial. I'm stronger than people half my age. Doesn't hurt being 21. I was in college just before 2000 and I remember talking to someone else in my dorm who was saying that she hoped that the end of the world would happen on the 1st of January 2000. She was a devout Christian, a preacher's kid, and figured that if all the doomsday predictions were correct, it would mean the second coming of Christ and she would get to go to heaven immediately. I remember people on both sides of the aisle being upset at her comments. Non-believers thought it was callous, when the implication was that she wasn't concerned about the fiery heck and chaos on earth for those who were left behind. Believers thought it was a ridiculous notion, when scripture says that we're not meant to know the hour of his arrival. A number of people anticipating midnight on the 1st of January 2000 isn't much of a secret. She took it to the extreme, but I've known quite a few devout Christians who truly anticipate their death so they can go to heaven. They are regular, normal people until they start talking about that kind of stuff. They go from oh aren't those nice flowers to if the Lord takes me now, it'll be the happiest day in a split second. I got a good one. When my mom was 18/19 she joined the military and as soon as she was able, she moved off base into a cheap little apartment with another girl the same age that she had met in basic. So one day my mom is alone and cleaning up their place when she notices this smell coming from her roommate's bedroom. She figures it's old dishes or food and goes to check it out. Room is spotless but it reeks. My mom walks around trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. Finally she looks under the bed and pulls out this box. It's dozens and dozens of bloody underwear. Her roommate had no clue about pads, tampons, and her own mother never told her. She would just change her clothes and toss the nasty panties under the bed. My mom had to sit down and have a talk with her. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.